Good morning. You're listening to Drinking Socially, the official Untappd podcast.
Your inside look into what's happening in the Untappd community and the world of beer.
I'm John, and hopefully this one sounds a lot better than episode 7. I know it won't taste as good. This one, we're focusing on low-calorie beers, and honestly, that doesn't really have to taste bad. The low-calorie beer is not a topic I ever thought I would be discussing, or at least for the next 20 years, but the beer world is moving in this direction, and we think it tastes great.
And I'm Harrison, and we've done it again this week. And what's better than 2 beers? 4 beers. Simple math. And when better to indulge than on a podcast and we're, as John said, focusing on this kind of low-cal, low ABV IPA craze that's here now and hopefully here to stay. So I've personally had 2 of these beers before, but one of the ones I haven't had, I've been very excited to try is its beer's big brother, if you will, is really one of the best go-to IPAs out there. So excited to see what a kind of smaller version of it is going to taste like. And I'm pretty thirsty too, so good time to be having lots of drinks in front of us. Good to know it won't be thirsty for much longer. But first, as a reminder, Drinking Socially is released every other Wednesday morning, It can be found at podcast.untappd.com.
Or wherever you listen to podcasts or even YouTube at this point. I'm
right.
Really excited to get into these beers with you, Harrison. And hopefully if you're listening, go ahead and click the subscribe button wherever you do listen so you can get a notification whenever we release a new episode.
Yeah. And we've been doing something pretty cool this season. Quick little weekend catch up before we dive into the beers. And this week I'm going to ask John kind of what he's been up to and if he's had some cool beer thoughts or beer experiences or just beers that stood out and want to share with us.
Yeah, thanks, Harrison. For me, it's, I don't want to say that these are exciting times because they certainly are not, but one thing that has been really, that I really have enjoyed is seeing how businesses have kind of really fast and adapted and evolved. And the takeaway for me is that not only does it feel like my local businesses care about my safety, but they allow me to order beer on the internet and it gets delivered to my house.
Mm-hmm.
For an old introvert. That's been really good. I had some beer dropped off over the weekend. I was able to go on Untappd and see what, cans and bottles they had. And for me, it was great. It was a really warm weekend where I am. So I was drinking Westbrook's Key Lime Pie Gosa. And it was even more satisfying. It felt a little bit like a return to normalcy, which we're probably a ways off from. And I'm dreading what happens when I have to start getting into some of the beers that I've cellared way too long. What about you, Harrison? Have you opened any up?
Yeah, not yet. Not out of the cellar. I have a couple that I've moved from the cellar to the fridge, which it would seem like progress, like I'm moving forward and will soon drink them, but they may go back into the cellar in a month and a half. It's kind of this dance I do between, this will be good, I'm excited, to, I don't want to drink that tonight. Every time I look at it, it looks like too much of a commitment, a large, 22-ounce bottle of a 17% barley wine that, was around 10 years ago, or released 10 years ago. So, but we'll get there. But really, to kind of echo what you were saying about the kind of changes we've been seeing, this whole delivery beer to your door it's pretty wild. It's great to kind of support your local community while not going out into it. I did it for the first time today. And it was a trip. My dog started barking in the afternoon and I was like, wonder what that is. And looked out the front door and there was a case of beer sitting there, like the beer fairy had just dropped it off, and I grabbed it and tucked it in the fridge. So definitely could get used to that pretty quick, but really excited that there's a way to kind of keep everyone a safe distance. We'll still be able to access new beers, support small business, all that stuff. It's important and really cool to see how many people have taken that in stride and quickly adapted to it, so they can keep going and provide an awesome service to their fans and their community. It's great.
And before, obviously, beer delivery may or may not be available in your area. You may be fortunate enough to be kind of already used to that.
Yeah.
For those of you that are new to it, it's great. Before that happened, Harrison and I were fortunate enough to be able to collaborate on what beers we were going to be doing for this podcast. Yeah. And they're all kind of widely available enough where he was able to schedule time to go pick them up from a local bottle shop. And I actually found all of these on the shelf at a grocery store. So
yeah, that was definitely a consideration looking at this stuff as we kind of been tracking these low calorie IPAs for a while since last season. We were kind of talking about them, seeing a few pop up, and kind of been making a pick list, if you will, since then. And yeah, lucky that we were able to find them pretty easily. Kind of all over the place, and hope you guys can too. Yeah, it's gonna be cool. But I'm excited to drink them. It's gonna be fantastic.
So outside of the introduction, Harrison, let's get to at least my favorite part.
Yes.
What's the first one we're drinking?
That's
today?
right. So beer number 1 is going to be Daytime IPA by Lagunitas, which is technically an IPA. A session IPA comes in at about 4%, listed at 31 IBUs. And from Lagunitas, they say this beer has achieved what we all hope for ourselves, to be made new again. So that's right. Daytime, if you remember, they released this a couple years ago in bottles, a little bit different. And they called it a micro IPA, I think, at the time, and kind of a tongue-in-cheek reference to now what we're just calling session or low-cal IPAs. Before that was even really a thing. But they say there is freedom in burning down the house of expectations, and it confers an undeniable lightness to being. Okay. We didn't invent these truths. They invented us. So Lagunitas do what Lagunitas does, and spitting rhymes and riddles, but also making great beer. So this is one of the ones I've had before, but I'm excited. It's been at least since last summer. So pumped to get in here and check it out. But let's open these guys up. Wow.
Few people can give a beer description like Lagunitas can. I remember the first time like reading on the side of the bottle, just thinking these guys are nuts, but this is great.
Exactly. Right. That was I had a similar sentiment of like, yeah, right. What are they saying? And if you ever enjoyed the videos that Jeremy, their brew monster, who's like their head brewer, he does on online when he talks about these beers and drinks them. It's a lot of fun. He is a funny dude, and definitely embodies kind of the vibe that Lagunitas has built their brand around. So if you haven't checked him out, definitely worth a follow and a look and a listen. All right, cool. So this guy poured out pretty crystal clear. Looks like super, straw yellow, big old fluffy head. Looking at John's and look at this.
I can see Harrison in the Zoom meeting through this beer.
I can see everything. Wow, but I'm loving this little look of it. Ooh,
beautiful. The like a clean, crisp white head. The head of this beer makes me think I'm drinking a German beer.
Right.
It looks gorgeous.
Yours does look very kind of Keller beer-esque, big and fluffy. Let's check it out.
Oh, the obligatory silence as I try and take this apart. That's this has like a real like lupulin aftertaste, like a really like there's maybe I should go back for a second sip, but I got like it reminds me of like throwing hot pellets into a boil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a piney hit, and it's very like raw almost. Like you kind of feels like you're smelling hops in your hands, which is so pretty pungent.
Yes.
But very like, obviously we're going to say drinkable too much. If you're playing a drinking game right now and the word of the day is drinkable, don't do that. It shouldn't be the word you use to play along with us at home. Cause we're going to say it a lot.
You won't make it to
you won't make it to beer too. It'll be, it is. And that was, I think important to say, they definitely accomplished that. Right out of the gate, I took my sip was more of a chug, and the beer is half gone, which is always a good first impression. If your first sip goes a little bit longer than normal, usually means immediately there's something good there that kind of can't be not even put into words. But this is So and also something we should say, we're doing something a little bit fun and different today with the summer coming up. As we drink these 4 beers, we're going to kind of pair them with common summer activities as we drink through them and talk about them. We picked kind of like for the 4 categories, we're going to try and drop these guys into like the poolside beer when it's like 90 plus out and really hot. We've got than the barbecue beer, or maybe when the in-laws come up over and, you're hiding outside, just tending to the grill. I'm going to flip the burgers again. What's that beer you drink then? The lawn beer, a perennial favorite, something that I take a lot of time each spring choosing the lawn beer of that year.
That's a classification.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And tonight is going to be good research towards that. And then kind of like the beer we're all enjoying now, the work from home beer or the office happy hour, virtual happy hour beer, something that's easy drink and go to. So we're kind of going to think about those 4 categories today as you enjoy these beers and maybe pair them up with an activity of sorts that best fits them. So this is early with all the kind of like pungent, I guess you would say piney for sure. Although the nose is very grapefruity, which a lot of their beers are. They're so known for that, like the grapefruit nose.
Yep. I don't think I would have got that unless you had mentioned it as I was trying to breathe this in. But as soon as you did, it was like pithy grapefruit rind. It's beautiful. Yeah, the hard part is that all of these beers are going to be a great fit for all of those activities. Exactly. So it may be arbitrary, but we're going to try and choose the best.
Exactly. So this is an early runner this is an easy 4%. This is an easy boom lawnmower beer, but I'm not committing to that yet. But I'm saying that's the one. That's the one right now. If I had to, in that first gulp I had, I could envision myself on the John Deere, just blindly riding through the bushes, doing a little bit of landscaping,
mowing the same line in the yard over and over again.
Where's your father? I don't know. He'll be in when he's in.
When he runs out of gas.
It's dark out. But yeah, this is great. And I mean, again, so let's take a look at this guy on Untappd. So almost 250,000 check-ins, 226,000 check-ins total, 169,000 unique, almost 3,000 this month. And again, this beer has kind of been reinvented. So I don't know. Looks like, so I said micro, they used to call this a fractional IPA. When they first released it.
That's what I remember.
That was I think in their description, they talked about it as a micro IPA, but they literally called it as part of the actual beer's name, a fractional IPA. And I loved that when that first came out. I was like, yes, it was around the time Founders All Day was kind of asserting itself as a new and exciting thing. And then Lagunitas came in with something that was like even more sessionable. So that was a cool time. But yeah, it's definitely different than that beer as far as I remember, in that it's very light. This is a grapefruit, extremely light, and really just kind of like the grapefruit note is the one that sings the most for me.
And of that, this is the beer that it has the most monthly activity on Untappd. It edges out all of them by at least a little bit. One thing that I've really liked about seeing people check in with the Untappd at home option. I've seen a couple of my friends check into this beer, even like in the last 2 or 3 days. Nice. Christine checked into it and said, nailed it. Nice. She's checking in, #flatten the curve. That's awesome. Thanks, Christine. Barry checked into it a few times in the same day. So
there you go. It's working.
Barry. That's always, I think it's always cool to see with a beer that gets enough distribution like this, like where you can see some of your friends that have had it, not just had it, but had it in the same couple of weeks, hopefully as you have as well. Or if you don't, look for people that just had this beer, and if you like the review, send them a friend request or add me and Harrison.
Yes,
we'll try and keep up.
That's right. Yeah, right. Exactly. We'll do our best. But yeah, this is right. Yeah, you're right. Barry's enjoying the heck out of this guy. That's great.
I can see a few people checking into variants on Untappd as well. The one that really caught my eye was Thai lime, lemongrass.
Ooh.
Some sort of root I won't pronounce correctly, and turmeric. Maybe, I don't know if this is a cask or a very limited run, but this beer already tastes like summer. Adding a little bit of lime to it, that's not wrong. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I see what you're talking about. That's pretty cool. Yes, right. Thai lime peel, lemongrass, some kind of cool root, and turmeric. Gotta be a kid.
Some kind of cool route. Another thing, I don't actually check this very often, but after last episode when we did the Mount Beermore update, and I looked at Saranac Disruption, which was a beer I put on my Mount Beermore. I'm the most loyal drinker for that particular beer, and I think that's pretty unique. I don't often check into the same beer a lot, but it made me start looking. And one cool part about this particular beer is the most loyal drinker is Tony P. He's checked it in 138 times. Number 2 is Tony B, and he's checked it in 125 times. So he's only a 12 pack away.
The battle of the Tonys. This is great.
And Tony is the Lagunitas founder, is he not? I'm pretty sure.
Tony P or Tony B?
Neither of these Tonys, I think, but I want to say the original genius behind Lagunitas is a man named Tony who loved music and learned to love how to make beer as well.
Yeah, there were a couple guys.
I could be wrong. I think I heard this story from an Untappd sales rep, though. Or
you're right.
A Lagunitas sales rep.
Tony McGee. Yep, he founded it in 1993. John,
yes,
you are on the money.
If that's right, then I'll share the other part of the story I heard from his sales rep was that they'd started brewing in Petaluma. I think that was where they set up first. And when they were going to be moving to their new location, Tony throws this awesome music concert. Everybody come in and the beer's free and everybody's hanging out at the tap room. And he's like, all right, everybody that's here, I need you to just grab the heaviest thing you can find. And we're going to carry it down the street to the new tap room. And much like every friend that needs help moving his apartment,
surprise. Tony
just did it with better surprise and a lot more class with free beer.
That's amazing. I love that. What a smart guy. Sure. Free move. And everyone gets beer. That's awesome.
As I'm finishing this beer, probably really quick, but we've got 4 to get through. Yep. Harrison, let's run through a quick catch up on Untappd social media.
Yes.
There's been some cool things we've done. You and I got to share in a couple virtual happy hours with Greg, got to see some people from the Facebook group Drinking Socially. And there's another one coming up. I think we're doing them every Thursday, at least through April.
That's right. That's the plan. It's 7 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays. Do virtual happy hour on Facebook. Right now, we do a Facebook Live event. So if you're free at 7 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays, check out Untappd's Facebook, and we can connect with you guys there. And you can ask Greg and then whoever the other guests are that week. We're going to probably rotate around with some pretty cool people in the works that I've heard whispers about. So definitely worth a look and a listen. And you can get in there and ask questions of Greg or whoever else he has as guests that day. But it was really fun to be part of the inaugural one. And yeah, again, just kind of see when we asked everyone, listening, what are you guys doing right now? And the kind of chat exploded with a lot of really cool beers, some of which have been on my wish list forever. Cool to know that.
Holy cow! I got really jealous really fast.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I feel like everyone but me has a Dark Lord sitting in their closet. Everyone, and they're always bringing it out whenever we do these things. I just kind of sit sadly without one.
I agree, and I feel your pain. There was a lot of. I think the term is flexing.
Right.
There was a lot of flexing being done in that check-in feed. It was great. We could at that point we were able to check in at the Untappd at home venue, and I got to see them all again. The last happy hour was actually Kyle Roderick, who used to do the podcast before you and I kind of jumped on. And Brandon Walker, who is the person that actually hired me, and I think you as well, Harrison.
Right. That's right. They'll be in there. Yeah, they just did the most recent one. So really cool, smart guys who have a lot of fun stuff to share with everybody. So that's great. And yeah, like I said, just kind of tune in, follow us on all our social media. You'll kind of be alerted there a day or so ahead of time who we'll be having in that week. But it's been a lot of fun so far.
The Untappd at home check-in venue, I just wanted to give that a quick shout out. By the time you're listening to this, it'll be over a million different beers checked in. And I went in just to kind of check really quick. The most popular checked-in beer at home is Guinness.
Nice.
Which isn't surprising. Guinness gets an absurd amount of check-ins on Untappd. But one thing that did surprise me, the most popular checked in, if we say craft beer in a different light, was Sierra Nevada's 40th hoppy anniversary.
That's awesome.
It's hard to believe that brewery's 40 years old.
Right? Isn't that cool? And amazing. I know. And still, as if not more so relevant now. It's certainly actually more so. In the beginning, Ken has all these great stories about how they couldn't give away pale ale because people didn't understand why the beer tasted that way. And there were a few places in New York and San Francisco and elsewhere that were like, all right, we get it. And people are actually drinking it. And that's how it started. No internet, all grassroots, like true underdog story. And doing it the right way for 4 decades. It's, again, I could talk about Sierra Nevada all day. I won't. That's another podcast, but yes, that beer is awesome.
That's an extended director's cut.
But yeah, great West Coast IPA. If you haven't had it yet, grab it while you can. It is their seasonal, so it's phasing out now, towards, in April. It should be moving along to their next one.
And then, so coming up after Lagunitas Daytime, the next one in our cadence is Flyjack from Firestone Walker.
Sweet.
And this is the first time I'll have had this beer. And honestly, the first time, maybe not the first Firestone Walker, but they're really new to me. They just got to North Carolina not long ago. This one reads a session IPA, which is going to be the theme of the night. It's 4% alcohol. Mm-hmm. They actually listed at 25 IBUs, and the notes read everything you want from a hazy IPA with nothing to weigh you down. This is Flyjack, Firestone Walker's new 96-calorie beer. Maximum flavor, minimal calories, no compromises. Would be a perfect commercial for this beer.
Yes.
And it's amazing what these breweries are doing with 100 calories in a beer. I don't want to talk about how many calories are in some of the triple lactose IPAs that I drink. But this is a way to drink a beer that tastes like something you love,
right? Without
having to stop after 2.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I know. And that's kind of the love of it, and the world. This is the world that John and I have been wanting to live in forever. Is right things that taste good, that you can enjoy more than just 2. In this, if you're a fan of Firestone Walker, this is Flyjack, their hazy India Pale Ales, it says on the can, or a session IPA. They have Union Jack, which is their IPA, Double Jack, which is a double IPA. So definitely Jack is the theme. For sure, it can be traced through, a lot of their beers. And they also are really well known for their Luponic Distortion series, which is great, a kind of rotating IPA that each time it comes out has different hops in it. So I remember when they came to the Philly market, it was awesome. I actually got to meet their head brewer at an event. It was a cool guy. I really like what they do. I think everything they make is very good. They're known well for their IPAs, but also like their stouts, their barrel aged stuff. They have an impressive now multiple breweries that kind of all over the mostly, I think, just all in California. But then Paso Robles is the headquarters of them, but they have one in San Diego, I think, and a couple other spots. So, or maybe Venice Beach. But anyway, let's jump into this guy. This is gonna be delicious. Bam! All right.
I can hear your can open from across the internet.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Good. Ooh.
Honestly, I'm surprised. This looks really close to the Lagunitas beer in terms of color. It's maybe a little bit, I wouldn't call it necessarily hazy, but cloudier.
Yeah, and
that's pretty.
It is. I mean, I would say it is hazier than daytime for sure. Although, yeah, definitely you can't see all the way through it. It's got a nice kind of chill haze to it. A bunch of tiny little bubbles. They're really, really bubbling away, almost champagne-y. Ooh. Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing how much different this beer is. I haven't even tasted it yet, just pouring it out of the can.
Yeah, it's very stone fruity. There's like a starburst note happening in the nose right away. Let's take a sip.
Ooh. Oh. Starburst.
Wow. So
like Fruity Pebbles,
right? Pretty pebbly. Also, completely different mouthfeel. And I'm going to go out on not much of a limb here and say this probably has some oats in it, which is giving it a lot of that haze. And those also have a lot of unfermentable sugars, which can give beers more of a mouthfeel, which is pretty cool. But they're still able to keep it at like 96 calories, which is also impressive. So, I mean, this is definitely like a science. I've always said like if you want to get a feel for a brewery's kind of technical prowess, have a lager from them, a beer that's clean, that you can't hide any off flavors behind a mountain of hops and stuff. This though is similarly a very simple, straightforward beer that, right, like it has to be very, very well made. You can't hide this behind quadruple dry hop things and goofy yeasts and all that stuff. It's great. The mouthfeel is what gets me most excited, though, where it does not taste like a super light beer at all.
I agree. The biggest difference is this reminds me more of the beers that I drink when I go out to a brewery. Right. The flavor on there it matches. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm incorrect in saying that it matches a New England IPA, but it feels less far away.
Right. Exactly. I think, that's a good way of putting it. Right. It feels like it's right. Like it's right. Yeah. Like it's right there. Like I wouldn't guess it was 4%. I guess it would probably be low ABV, but the actual mouthfeel of it really kind of throws you off a bit. I'm thinking that it's a 96 calorie, 4% extremely sessional beer. This is great. This is the kind of stuff that just like you want to drink. I mean, it's tough to mass produce cask beer, but man, give me a hand pump of this guy. I'd love to check that out, because this is, again, a lot of the a lot of the best bitters and English bitters are 3.7%, 4%. They're low ABV beers, but the natural carbonation you get from cask conditioning something adds a different kind of body to it, where it doesn't taste like a thin beer. It's a full bodied drink out of the hand pump, and this would be really cool to have served up out of the cask. So that is now become, as you're hearing me describe it, something I'm putting on a list of. I'm going to look for casks of all these session IPAs now, and a small crusade I'll be going on now until it's accomplished. But this is cool. This is great.
And I think for me, if you've listened to the show, I'm just a total nerd for this stuff, but I love that we're trying 4 of these on paper, almost identical beers, but we're 2 in, and it reminds me of the Oktoberfest episode where, even though they're 4%, 100 calorie session IPAs, already the mouthfeel on this one is lingering. Really it's the oats, I would presume, but there's such a different texture going on here.
Absolutely.
Drinkable for those of you playing at home.
Drinkable. There you go. And, as we're playing along, this one, I don't know if it's the mouthfeel, how buoyant this beer feels, but I'm thinking this is my poolside beer as of now. Early front runner poolside beer. Something about just how it kind of floats in your mouth like a good old inflatable pool lounge mat, whatever those things are called.
Just waiting to see where you're going with that one.
This is great, while still being refreshing for sitting in the hot sun, bubbling away in a pool. It can happen here. It's great.
It's not cloying at all. This is a beer that you could I don't know if it's age or the beer world, but it's hard for me to drink a 6-pack, especially if I'm thinking of 16.9 ounce cans at 8%.
Right. No way.
As much as I would love to live that life again, I am too old for that.
Right.
This at least allows me to build a proper can pyramid and drink all 6 of them.
Man, that's good. That's really cool. I was not expecting it to taste as full bodied as it does when I looked at it. And that's impressive. That's great. This is nice lacing as I'm rocking the glass around. This is fantastic. I wish I knew what kind of hops are in it. Right away, it kind of smelled like Citra, but I'm sure it's a kind of blend of hops they can get their hands on. which they can Firestone Walker can get their hands on whatever they want. But this would be cool separately to drink next to Union Jack and Double Jack and see if there are any crossover similarities or if they're all their own kind of thing. Double Jack and Union Jack are you can definitely taste some similarities there. This one may be an outlier, but an interesting experiment maybe nonetheless.
One cool part about doing this podcast remotely with you, Harrison, is it allows me to Google as we go.
Right.
So this beer from Firestone Walker has Cascade and Callista hops in the kettle.
Okay.
And then for dry, it's Strata, Mosaic, Chinook, and Sabro.
Ooh, Sabro.
So Strata and Mosaic, hell yes. I get excited about those. Chinook and Sabro, I don't know enough about.
The Chinook is what I'm getting.
Ooh. Is that the kind of grapefruity starburst thing?
Yeah. Yes, that's all I smell. Power of suggestion. Amazing.
Yeah, it's true.
That's
sadly not available in a cask.
Yeah, yet. Well, maybe they'll ask him. If you know him, ask him. Ask your local Firestone Walker rep. Man.
One really nice part, not to go too tangential here, but for those of you that do have diabetes, the few of us, or that watch your carbohydrates, this beer has 5 carbs. So
really cool.
We're talking about 12 ounces of beer, half of an Oreo. That's a good measurement.
That's a great. I'm going to do that all the time now.
How many Oreos is that beer? Right. Let's go to burial together.
900 Oreos. 900. Oh, man.
What about Untappd, Harrison? We just launched a pretty big update over there. You were talking earlier about some of the changes for every user that'll go into effect.
Yeah, that's right. So there are a couple of different things that happen both on the supporter side, but then also, on something that all the users are going to be able to really enjoy right away now that it's actually out there and released. The one that kind of stood out to me was that correct me if I'm wrong, John, we're expanding the review, the amount you can write as a review. Is that correct? How long, like the characters? You got like 255 now?
Yep. So going back to the early days of Twitter and even when Untappd was first created, that character count was really important.
Right.
It helped to build what Twitter became. And Greg, when he was developing Untappd, kind of felt the same way. So he kept that character count on your description minimal.
Right.
For a long time, supporters have been able to leave it's almost twice as much in their check-in description, and in the newest version of Untappd, that's going to roll out to everybody who uses the app as well. You'll have 250 characters with emojis you can put in your check-in.
Yeah, that's right. The emojis, that was the thing that got me excited because I feel like I do that all the time already and try to like just speak in emojis a lot of the time. Although sometimes it gets more confusing than it's worth. But that was pretty cool that you just have a little bit more time or a little more space to really make a memory there. That was something that I really liked. Beer advocate for in the early days was just talk as long as you want. Write a thesis if you want about this beer. It doesn't matter. So cool that we're just growing a little bit there, and excited to see how our users use that. Coming up, that'll be great. What else, John? I'm sure I'm forgetting other cool things in this most recent release.
Yeah, another big update in this release kind of launches almost like a free version of the Untappd supporter analytics. So you'll be capped. You can only go back and look at the most recent 7 days, but you'll be able to get, if you're an Untappd supporter, you can do this going back years, but for everyone that uses the app, it gives you an easy way to go back. You can see, how many of your check-ins were at a new venue, were can versus bottle, what got the highest rating. Right. Like me, for instance, I had 30 check-ins in the last 30 days, and 18 of them came from a can. It was really cool to go back and easily just check that. My top rated was an American Wild Ale, which makes sense for me, but Harrison, anything cool on your end that you noticed sticking out?
Looking through it today, about 88% of the beers I had this month were beers I'd never had before. So almost all of them, which is great. Mostly American IPAs, also not surprising. And I definitely think that I recently picked up New Belgium's canned variety pack right now is 2 different American IPAs in it, and I enjoyed all those, checked them in, so definitely contributed to that information that the skewing towards American IPAs. Actually, it was only 3 of them were American IPAs, so it's not like an overwhelming amount. But yeah, it's really cool to look at that stuff and kind of as you drink and expand your palates, your beer knowledge, all that stuff, have a kind of a metric you can look back and month over month or quarterly or however you want to look at your life's metrics. A lot of people do it daily on their iWatch or whatever. But have that for your beer as well and see what changes or what's always there at the top.
After that, let's get ready and hear from our sponsor. But stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to be drinking the beer Harrison's been most excited about.
Oh, boy.
Want to show off your love of Untappd? Check out our online store and pick up Untappd branded glassware, shirts, sweatshirts, hats, more. Depending on how hot or cold you are, go to store.untappd.com and enter the coupon code podcast when you check out. That'll get 20% off anything you order. That's store.untappd.com. Use the coupon code podcast, 20% off for you. Plus, it lets them know that you guys are listening, and we love that here.
All right. Awesome. So I'm pumped. This is the beer I kind of alluded to that we're going to drink next in the beginning, what I've been waiting for. We're going to drink it right now. Lighthearted Ale from Bell's. Obviously, the name itself a play off Two Hearted, which really is, I mean, I know I'm not saying anything original here, but such a great beer. One of the best IPAs out there. One that I fell in love with early in my kind of beer, experience, whatever you want to call it. Absolutely love that beer. So when they revealed they were going to have a sessionable, basically, version of it, I was like, that is, sign me up. This is the best of both worlds. Let's experience it. But I haven't had a chance to drink it until today, so I'm pumped to do this, John, with you right now. It's going to be great.
I remember how excited you were when we were kind of putting this episode together, doing 100-calorie beers. Like, your face looked 20 years younger when you told me the Bell's is doing one too.
That's right. They almost didn't
I can't
sell me the
believe
beer.
you've waited this long.
Right. Almost didn't sell me the beer. It was so young looking. That's how excited I was. Yeah, I know, right? How did I wait? But so some quick hits about it. So obviously Bell's brews it again, session IPA, but this one's 3.7%, so a little bit lower on the ABV side of things. And I believe so it's got 110 calories, so a little bit 8.7 carbs. So, and they made a point of talking about that in their blog of like, a lot of the buzz is a sub 100 calorie beer, but they felt like getting there would compromise really the quality of the beer. So 110 still accessible, low calorie beer by any measure, especially these days, all the adjuncts, people popping these things. So, and again, 3.7% alcohol. So you're even getting a little bit, longer drinking life with this beer. You can probably maybe put away 0.3% more of them than a 4% like we just enjoyed. But enough talking about it. I want to open up this thing and experience it, John.
True.
Let's do it.
Some of those numbers are pretty granular.
Exactly.
An Oreo technically has 53 calories. Right. So we're talking about a 2 Oreo beer.
Perfect.
Calorically, but less than 1 when it comes to sugar count. That's cool.
Ooh.
Different color as soon as it leaves the can. I'm excited about this. I've had this before. I had it on draft when it when it first came out, and I remember immediately I was like, man, Two Hearted was such a great beer. Yep. But this beer deserves its own praise. This beer is going to be great. I'm excited to hear you drink it.
And it looks right away like it's usually the darkest. It's more copper than straw. It looks almost like it's a little bit lighter than Two Hearted. It's not that orangey kind of hue of a copper, I guess that I would call Two Hearted, but it's close to it. Big old fluffy head. Smells very similar. Obviously, Two Hearted's claim to fame is that it's a 100% Centennial hopped beer. That's all that's in it. I believe that, actually I'm confirming now, that from Bell's itself, the Lighthearted is brewed with Centennial and Galaxy. And I love Galaxy. So you got to be, like, when I read that the first time, you got to be kidding me. Centennial is like my favorite of the OG hops, if you will. Galaxy is probably my favorite of these newer age hops. So this is like a combination of things I love that I didn't even expect to happen. So yeah, it smells. It smells very similar to Two Hearted. That is wild. They have such a great. Here, let me have a sip of this, and I'm going to share some thoughts.
This is, yes, drink it. This is so different than the first two. It's amazing.
Oh wow, yeah. Yes. All right, so Bell's is one of those, that's very good. There's almost like a grape note happening, which is probably pulling from the Galaxy. The Centennial punches through with that classic kind of piney citrusy stuff it does. Bell's is one of those great breweries. And I've spoken about this a little bit before in the past, but they kind of almost all their beers have a very similar malt profile. So again, easy to talk about hops all day and use cool, colorful language there. Well, the malts kind of take a back seat, but it used to be that you could blind taste test a Bell's and a Cigar City and a Dogfish Head, and I could tell you what was what based on the base malt. I mean, most of these beers are, 70 to 90% the same two-row grain. And then after that, it's specialty malts that make the difference between what a pale ale and a stout looks like. But it's mostly the same base ingredient, a nice, usually two-row American or English malt there. So Bell's, and you can tell right away from the nose and the taste, uses that in the same two-row in almost all their beers, which is really cool because it makes it very familiar. It's almost like a band that you like that releases a new record where it's a new record, but it's the same band. Like it's always that same thing you can return to that is distinctly Bell's, and it's happening right now, which is really cool. And it's like an old friend you haven't seen in a while, but it got a new haircut, and you're like, oh, all right, I still know you and trust you, even though you look a little bit different. But this is really. I'm surprised that's what's jumping out to me, but it's also not that surprising knowing again how great Bell's is and how much I enjoy it.
No, I think you nailed it with the band in a world where it's so easy to become loyal to a beer. Mm-hmm. Like people know Hetty Topper more than they know who the Alchemist is. Bell's does a great job. Like if Social Distortion released a new album, you could identify Mike Ness as the lead singer immediately, even though it's been 10 years and it's a new album, and like that commonality between it, allowing you to kind of, if you love Bell's Two Hearted, you'll probably like most of their other beers, at least a little bit.
Yeah. And that's happening here. And that's, again, really cool. So easily kind of jumping into, just because I'm selfish and want to have this beer as much as possible, kind of my work from home office happy hour beer. This is the one that I can, again, early runner for that. After work, I'm heading down to the corner pub and I'm having me a Lighthearted and then another Lighthearted before anyone even gets there. And then I'll have my one beer with the office. But this is great. It's got a ton of flavor on the malt side and the hop side. And that's really cool. And it does not look, I mean, again, you can look at the pictures of it on Untappd as well, if you haven't had it yourself yet. But it just looks like a little Two Hearted, which is what it is pretty much.
I'm gonna oversay this, but 3 beers, very, very similar caloric content, ABV, style. If you gave me a blind taste test between all 3 of these beers, I could identify them now, but I would never be able to point out that they're all 100 calorie, 4% IPAs. Like this one is the most different to me that we've had so far.
Yes. And again, I think it's so funny how, again, old things become new, all that stuff, where really like what we're talking about is like you could say American craft beer's interpretation of what the UK is known forever, of what's like a great after work. You're in the steel mill all day making, things, the railroad tracks, and you walk out of there and you want to have a mild or a bitter, and you want something you can drink a couple of, but doesn't knock you out the next day because you got to get up and do it all again. It's tough work. So this is kind of our discovery of that. And if you're a fan of UK beers, or you live there and you had a lot of them, and you've had a lot of best bitters and ESBs and milds, like, that even though each one of those categories has so many different kinds of beer that all taste different inside it. So I think we're just kind of beginning to see what a low-calorie sessionable beer can be in kind of the eyes and the hands of the American craft brewer. And it's so far really exciting. But you're right, John. I think we're going to see a lot of changes and a lot of different interpretations of this as people get more creative and kind of do more stuff with low ABV beers. And I'm excited for that, because it really is like, again, we've said it a lot. It's what we want, is the world where every beer is 4%, but tastes like a lacto IPA, and someone will do it. Someone will figure out how to do that. And we're going to probably see it. It'll probably happen soon. And that'll be pretty wild to kind of have this innovation happening on a more sessionable level. It's exciting.
I totally agree. Many times, maybe not many, almost daily for the last 3 years, I've found myself on the phone with a pub, bar, restaurant in the UK, specifically like London, Leeds. I won't say other city names because I often say them wrong, but the big difference that I get, that I walk away thinking, and this is subjective, but Americans think 20 years is a long time. Right. Our friends across the pond do not, but the ABV, like a cask ale, a bunch of casks in America wouldn't work because they're all 8%, and you wouldn't be able to turn them over in time. And there's a certain joy I get from, I mean, this is 4%.
Not even,
I have to drink twice as much, but I can, and that part's really exciting to me. If I have to get through a Thanksgiving drinking double IPAs, it's going to end in a political argument.
A fight in the driveway. That's not how you patch drywall. This is how you patch drywall. Bam. And then exactly right. But this is awesome. And on Untappd, I mean, we're seeing a lot of great activity on it. It was only about 16,000 check-ins as a beer that was really released widely, back in the first month of the year, back in January I think that's when they released it, at least in Michigan, and then it kind of moved nationally. Already more than 16,000 check-ins, 13,000 unique, 2,600 this month. And this is the one that I would kind of keep an eye on this summer and just kind of watch it. But there's already the fourth picture as of recording this podcast on the Lighthearted's page on Untappd is a Lighthearted, a bunch of hot dogs, a bunch of hot dog buns. Someone is getting ready to grill with this thing. And I think this is, even though I already said, happy hour beer, yes, I could, I mean, color me not surprised if I'm standing next to the grill with one of these in my hand every other night for the next 6 months. So this is going to be cool to see this beer kind of just grow as it gets a little bit warmer out and people are hunting for something like this.
So true. I mentioned my Untappd friend Christine had checked into Lagunitas Daytime. I see that she's also checked into this beer very recently. What was neat about looking at the beers your friends have checked in on a beer like this is you can see like they've checked in multiple times. David has checked into this beer a lot this month. Right. Good job, David. Someone checked in, said they're building the Millennial Falcon. All right. Lauren makes a good point. Not a bad beer for low calorie, but not my first choice when I'm looking through the fridge sober. And yeah, absolutely. If it's Friday night and I'm trying to get turned, right. Maybe if it's Friday night and I don't have to work tomorrow morning, and that great time to open up that triple barley wine, barrel age, whatever. But for after work, for a Wednesday lunch, this is beautiful.
Right. It really is. And yeah, again, it's exciting. It's exciting that we're here. I really do see it as the beginning of a whole new kind of beer frontier that a lot of smart brewers are going to play around with, and many have been for a while. But I think with the kind of national attention that a lot of really reputable beer publications are kind of giving these low-cal IPAs right now, it's going to be revisited by breweries who made one a couple years ago and just called it a session IPA, but now it's a low-calorie IPA, and that's a reason to brew it again and maybe revisit how you made it. And knowing now what other breweries like Bell's and Oscar Blues and Firestone Walker and Lagunitas and others have done. This is this is fantastic. It's what I wanted it to be. It really is. It feels like a baby Two Hearted, which is perfect. I wish I had more of them. I already can tell I'm going to want this tomorrow again around the same time, and I'm going to have to another delivery to the door.
And the label on it looks like one of those fancy T-shirts that I probably couldn't afford. Right. The label looks beautiful. Good job, Bells.
It's almost, I don't want to say retro because that word is overused and whatever, but it definitely feels like something you would see hung up in your grandfather's cabin by the lake, like a picture of this in a little frame. Nailed it. That no one notices until you see it one day and go.
A sticker on the back of an old truck that doesn't work anymore.
In a junkyard somewhere by some riverbank. But yeah, this is, I like that. Yeah, great point. I meant to mention that because I really do like the can art and the label art for this beer too. But man, I mean, really cool stuff. Keep doing it, Bells. Curly, you got the IPA game figured out. This is awesome. I'm pumped they're sharing it with more people because this has been something they've done a little bit in the at their Center Cafe before, but now it's released to the wild, and here we are enjoying it.
And it's only about 100 check-ins behind Lagunitas Daytime this month. Right. So
that's what I mean.
That's a really close. Yeah. I mean, both of these beers are getting a lot of activity on Untappd. Before we transition into our fourth and final beer for this episode, Harrison, you actually brought this to my attention just a day or two ago. What Other Half is doing to help. It reminds me a lot of what Sierra Nevada was doing with the wildfires in Northern California a couple of years ago. And so, can you just kind of give me the high level view? It's really exciting, and I think Other Half deserves a lot of respect for putting this together. But I also don't understand it very well.
Right? Yeah. So what they're doing, Other Half out of New York, they have put together basically a recipe for a beer that anyone can brew, and so there's already been a lot of breweries that have gotten behind it, but really kind of as the world's battling the COVID-19 outbreak, they're trying to raise some money to support the hospitality industry, who's on the front lines of this through the sale of this beer. So the beer is going to be called All Together. The recipe itself is online. Anyone can read it. Anyone can brew it. I just saw a couple breweries from my hometown brew it about 2 days ago. So, but they're calling it a worldwide collaboration brewed to support hospitality professionals, and it's going to be called All Together. Now, something really, and again, absolutely right, John, that it's very similar to the Resilience IPA that Sierra Nevada made and then released the recipe to everybody, and a ton of breweries made it to help support businesses and people impacted by the North California wildfires. Yeah.
At least on Untappd, there was over 1,000 different breweries that made that Resilience IPA.
Amazing stuff. And so this one, for Other Half, kind of takes a slightly different approach to it, where what they're doing is they have the recipe laid out, and I'm just going to kind of read some highlights of it right now, where they talk about the water profile of Brooklyn, which is pretty unique, but also pretty soft and neutral, which is cool. So, but the grain bill is going to be 81%. So as I said before, like a two-row. So most beers are mostly two-row, and then 50% flaked oats, and then Carapils, which is a specialty malt that kind of can add some body, give the beer a nice head to it. 4% of that. And the hop schedule is Columbus, Mosaic, Cascade, Simcoe, Citra, Mosaic, Cascade. A lot of that being actually almost all of it, other than the Columbus, being added in the Whirlpool and dry hop. So the unique part about this beer as they say right at the top of the recipe, is that it's designed to be flexible for brewers that want to make it as either a New England style IPA or a West Coast style IPA. And basically what you would do to adjust for each style is if you want to brew a West Coast IPA, you would add the Columbus hops right at the 60-minute mark of your boil to actually have the alpha acids convert to what are called iso alpha acids. Not important, but basically make the bittering characteristics of the hop come out in the beer, which is necessary for a West Coast IPA, and then pitch what's called, in the industry they call it the Chico yeast, or the which is a yeast that Sierra Nevada basically I think created, that a lot of breweries use. It's also referred to as 001, which is its like catalog number for White Labs, which is a huge yeast company that a lot of breweries use. Anyway, a yeast that's going to create a West Coast style IPA, or if you want to make it New England, then you don't add the Columbus at that kind of bittering point where it would create some bitterness. Just add hops in the whirlpool and the dry hop, and then use London ale yeast. So London ale yeast is known to kick off a lot of haze, and that's a big contributor to the hazy IPAs that we see today is the yeast that's used. It's not just the oats, not just specific kind of hops that kick off a lot of haze as well. Yeast has a lot of that, and so the London ale yeast is the one that a lot of breweries use to make New England style IPAs. So you basically have two recipes here in one, and it's like a choose your own adventure. And I'm really excited to see which breweries do which version, if some breweries brew both, because they're going to be very different beers when you drink them or have them side by side. They're going to look different, they're going to smell different, they're going to taste different. So it'd be cool if they brewed both, but also really need to see if they pick one, compare one breweries to another just to see what they're doing. Because again, water profile is going to come into play, if you're able to use the specific hops they list or not. All kinds of variability here, but it's exciting. As was the Resilience beer. I had a couple of different breweries versions of it. They were all really good. It was a pretty classic West Coast style IPA. But this, again, makes me excited. And it's unfortunate that it takes, something as tragic as, national, international incidents to create stuff like this, because it's really fascinating to kind of just see everyone's different take on essentially what it should be the same beer. So we're definitely keep our eyes out for this. It's being brewed by breweries like literally this week as we're recording it. So it'll be 2, 3, 4 weeks before we probably see it out there in the world. But that we're going to be watching for it and trying to grab some to enjoy here. And now you guys know as well, if you haven't heard about that yet, definitely if you don't follow Other Half online or want to look this stuff up, it's pretty easy to look up Other Half altogether. Google that and learn more about what I'm talking about today. But it's exciting for sure, pretty unprecedented, and really just looking forward to supporting the hospitality industry through enjoying a pretty awesome beer from a lot of great breweries that are going to make it.
Just in following up, Harrison, I noticed that Other Half has actually pledged their proceeds to the Restaurant Workers Community Foundation. Nice. And they ask any participating brewery to do something similar to that. You can already find a few of these coming up on Untappd, like Percent Tap House, I think was actually the first to list their collaboration. They're out of Harrisburg, North Carolina, but Other Half has already published Trillium, Side Project, Monkish, Alvarado Street, Burial, The Veil, some of the big names in the United States, and even some smaller, like your own local brewery is invited to participate in this. They've reached out internationally: Omnipolo, Northern Monk, Garage Project, Wylam Lervig.
Yeah, look at this. That's right. The list is pretty impressive. Whiplash from Dublin, Ireland, and but then also breweries from close to my hometown. Breweries we're going to be able to get our hands on. So I saw Burial's doing it, and Southern Grist in Nashville, and the altogether.beer is the website that they have to learn more about it. We can see the breweries that are going to be participating, and a lot of them have already listed the hospitality groups they're going to. The proceeds of this beer is going to go and support. So that's, again, really, really fantastic stuff. pumped it's happening. Also, not for nothing, really cool that you're getting to see, behind the scenes at Other Half. They're basically saying, like, here's how we build an awesome beer recipe, and just open sourcing that, giving, arguably one of the best, breweries in the world right now, just saying, here's our playbook, here's how we do this to make a really great beer. Go out there and make it. So, I mean, that got me really excited from just being a fan of well-executed beers too, to just to look forward to enjoying this, and also seeing how other breweries take it on. Yeah, Garage Project in New Zealand. There's all. I mean, this is amazing. Vegan in Norway. This is going to be really cool. Even Stockholm Brewing Company in Stockholm. This is great.
I'm confident that we won't be able to get our hands on nearly any of these beers, but I can assure you that at least one of these variants will be on the podcast coming up. And I think it'd be really fun to kind of compare some of the differences between them.
Yes.
But thanks for sharing that, Harrison. I think that's something that we literally can all drink together.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting.
With similar roots. So thanks for sharing that, Other Half, and thanks for filling us in. Harrison, we've got one more of these low-calorie beers on the podcast. This is good. I've already drank 3 beers, and I feel good. I could go out and mow the lawn if it wasn't dark right now.
Likewise. Although I'll probably settle for just kind of sitting on the couch and catching up on whatever Netflix thing I'm watching.
The last beer on this episode, I think the biggest debate about this one is how it's pronounced. But I kind of affectionately, I refer to it as onesie.
I love.
Some of you might call it oney. I guess that's probably the only two that come up most commonly. But brewed by Oscar Blues, oney or onesie 100-calorie hazy IPA checks in as a session IPA, 4% ABV. And the notes they give us on Untappd aren't exhaustive, but what I love is that they do tell us the hops that are in the dry hop are Eldorado, Comet, and Citra, which, if you've been listening along, all 3 of those I think are new to the dry hop section of any of the other beers we've had. So I'm going to expect this one to taste differently than the first 3 beers we've had, of course.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll admit I've had this one before, and likewise, I'm really impressed. This beer tastes exactly like the New England trend that's still holding most people, myself included. I love a hazy New England beer, and this is exactly that, kind of candy, citrus, stone fruit. It definitely throws some haze. I can see you shaking your head on the Zoom camera here.
I know it's the nose. This thing, it's just massive. There's such an art, but also a science, as can be expected, and those roads often cross in brewing of dry hopping stuff. Like, you could easily over dry hop something. It tastes like you're drinking a salad. Like, there's just too much like vegetative stuff, too much just raw unboiled hops that sat in the beer too long. It can taste like wet grass. It can be cloying and gross. So none of that's happening here, which is expected, but also amazing that how great Oscar Blues is at just executing on the beer at hand. No exception here. And I've also had this beer before, and I couldn't believe it the first time I had it. I mean, let's dive in again, but I couldn't believe it was a session IPA for a lot of reasons. The nose right away, it grabs you like you're just going to drink a big old 8% IPA. You smell this thing, you're like, this is loaded with hops.
Yeah, that's the takeaway from this beer. It's uncanny how much it represents any of the $10 cans I would buy individually.
Right. Yeah. Boom. Huge nose. Nice body to it as well. Definitely the haziest of the beers we've enjoyed tonight in terms of just how it looks and all that jazz. Big fluffy head to it too. Excuse me. Yeah. 100-calorie hazy IPA. Eldorado, Comet, which used to be a wild hop, and we've kind of cultivated it since. And then Citra, which also definitely contributes to the haze of this. Citra kicks off more haze than any other hop I've ever worked with. So we've got a lot of things kind of working to their advantage here to make it look, yeah, like you said, John, like a New England, like a proper New England pale ale IPA. And man, but you can just keep enjoying them again and again. Man, it's almost unbelievable how low an ABV it is. You have a sip of it and it just, it just kind of tastes like an awesome hazy pale ale. And I wouldn't think for a second that this was doing something more, trying to be a low ABV beer, trying to be something that's calorically kind of conscious and all that stuff. It just tastes like an awesome pale ale or IPA that's just really good beer.
I couldn't agree more. This would be a beer, if you handed it to me blind, I would assume this is a 7%.
Right.
Made from wherever we are, whatever your local brewer is doing in New England. I would comment that this is amazing, and I could actually maybe drink one or two of them. It doesn't have that kind of palate coating, New England lingering flavor that I love, but also in the idea of drinking a few, it gives me all that flavor in the front. And then it has almost like when we drank Pliny the Elder, and it was really powerful, but it had a really nice, balanced, clean finish.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would venture to bet that most of the hops in this beer are just in the dry hop or the whirlpool towards the end of it. I mean, it's not very bitter at all. There's a little bit there happening at the end, but tons of hop flavor. And just, again, such a well-made beer. There is no off note in it. It's just smooth, and then grapefruit, a little bit of grass. There's some citrus happening. And then it just kind of floats away. It's a very kind of, again, mouthfeel. The Flyjack was the most impressive, I think, so far tonight in terms of just mouthfeel. This one's in that same ballpark where you drink it and it just, it's that kind of, that hard to measure factor of any beer where it can really throw you for a loop if you're blind taste testing something and it's got a lot of oats in it or whatever it may be that kind of adds more body while not imparting much more alcohol. Your mind is kind of going like, well, this, what am I having here exactly? What style of beer is this? What is this? Because it's kind of sending me down two different roads, but two roads I love. So great. Let's keep going.
This one for me is the most familiar beer that we've drank tonight. It tastes like everything I've drank for the last year. Not everything, but all the big New Englands that I'm really excited about. It feels more comfortable, and it wouldn't be as much of a change if I was going to visit my dad and we're going to drink a couple of beers together and talk about unfinished projects like we often do. This would allow me to drink something that feels very comfortable, but not get very tangential in those projects after a few beers.
And I would imagine it would go well with anything, as we've kind of established on this podcast again and again, is that tacos, pizza, barbecue chicken, great. It goes well with all those things, but probably maybe my barbecue beer, if I had to put it in one of those categories I talked about before, just because I think it can hold up to a big old, spicy barbecue chicken breast that you're, inhaling with some sweet corn and this guy right next to you. I mean, it definitely, because it also, I mean, it's as flavorful it's kind of like each sip I take kind of almost cleanses my palate a little bit, which is really not something you talk about with IPAs. It's more about how dominating the hop profile can be. But for this, because it is definitely, it is a lighter beer, there's something kind of intrinsically refreshing about it that makes you want to take that next sip and then grab that next can of it and all those good things that come after that. But could sit next to a big meal, a big barbecued meal you just grilled, and still be something you're tasting and not kind of disappear into the background. And that's really cool. That's awesome. And again, hard to do at this alcohol level and all this stuff being considered that went into this, making this beer. This is awesome.
And one cool thing as I'm looking through Untappd, This beer right now is getting a lot of check-ins at multiple locations called the Bishop's Arms, which is Swedish-based. It's a franchise. If we were here in America, there's a lot of them, but they really do a good job of honoring good craft beer. And I think it was a couple of years ago, I was on the phone with someone at the Bishop's Arms, and they were talking about how Henrik from Omnipolo actually began as like a beer buyer and curator for the Bishop's Arms before he left and said, I'm going to open a brewery and see what happened. And I think we all know what happened. He does pretty amazing stuff. But it's cool to see this beer getting a lot of check-ins over there right now. Looking through my friends feed, the most recent person on my friends list that checked this in was Kurt, who is Untappd's CEO. So, and he seemed to enjoy it as well. He checked it in at Untappd at home, along with so many other people. It's really cool seeing on Untappd all the check-in photos of people using Zoom and working from home and kind of supporting the cause, if you will. But still finding a way to go out and drink some cool ass beer.
I see Stephen Wren, who's one of my friends on Untappd, had it on the 23rd of March and had called it a pretty good diet IPA, pungent hops, diet IPA. There we go. Love it.
Diet IPA, Stephen, you do marketing well.
Patent pending. Good job. I love that. Only a matter of time. But yeah, again, it's this is great. And again, it's available. Like I saw this in Oscar Blues. Awesome. I think it's like a 15 pack they do where it's this and Dale's Pale Ale, Mama's Ale pills. I think the Can of Bliss and maybe Goodnight is what they call that beer now. It used to be called Gordon a long time ago, which is how I'm dating myself. But that,
yes, you are.
But that's and I have an old tap handle that says Gordon sitting in some box somewhere in my attic because we at a bar I worked at, we had it and they came in and said, here's the new tap handle. It's called Goodnight now. But I took the Gordon one home. So anyway, so it's all over the place. I mean, it's just, that's, and I think we do a good job of highlighting it, but something that, again, I think it bears repeating is that we're living in a really cool time right now where you can walk into your local grocery store or your local, beer store and find so many awesome beers, just well-made, great beer. You can grab a bunch of and head home, and that's never happened before. It's never been this available. Great beer. It's pretty amazing.
So true. We did 4 tonight. One I wish we could have had on the show was Stone Brewing's Never Ending Haze.
That was impressive.
That's another kind of low calorie IPA that gets a lot of check-ins.
Yeah.
But this was the first Oscar Blues, the first Lagunitas, the first Bell's, and the first Firestone Walker beer on the podcast.
Yeah.
So
right.
Really excited to have all these guys available and on the badge as well. So this I expect we'll see quite a bit of people leveling up from the addition of these 4 pretty easily available beers for most people.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the Never Ending Haze is fantastic. And then one that a lot of people are talking about now is the Wowza from Deschutes. I've seen a lot of talk about that. It's really new on the scene.
It seems almost a mandate now if you're a regional size brewery that you're keeping up with this. One cool part about Wowza on Untappd, it's listed as a New England Pale Ale instead of a Session IPA. I don't know if that'll make a lot of difference unless you're chasing the Wheel of Styles badge.
Right. Yeah, but it is on the can says low-cal hazy pale ale. So they're identifying it as such. However, I mean, if you're playing at home, it is also listed as having 4% and 40 IBUs. So we're looking at also the most bitter of any of the beers we had tonight. This one's almost twice as much as almost any of them. So that's interesting. That'll be on my list. I'm going to subscribe to that right now, actually. So when it lands near me, I just know about that.
Pick it up. We really need to do that episode on IBUs at some point. It's just
every time I say it, I laugh.
It's canonized that we just put it off till later, though.
Yeah, we'll keep pushing, kicking that can down the road, if you will. Fantastic, cool stuff.
So wrapping up, it's been a great show. We went way over our time, but hopefully those of you listening at home are enjoying the extra 20 some odd minutes now. And I'm going to ask Harrison, to put his hops where his mouth is.
All right, exciting.
Don't do that. Don't
ever
eat
eat
the
hops. Don't ever do that.
But we were talking quite a bit about giving each of these beers an allocation. So let's run them down, man. What have you got?
Let's do it. So for the poolside beer, I think that was one of the first beer we had. The daytime it jumped right out to me as something I could. Or no, the more buoyant one. Yeah, the Fly Jack. Excuse me. Here we go. Let's remember. So Fly Jack was the one that got me excited about the pool. I'm going to put that there as my poolside beer. The mouthfeel was surprising. It was great, and it could easily kind of hold up if I'm sitting in the sun, getting not tan, but like a light red. Be something that's refreshing as I'm quickly dehydrating in a large body of water, which is difficult to do. What about you, John? What jumped out to you for poolside?
Poolside for me is lighthearted because of how that was the beer that gave me the least linger. It was a very it was a very clean beer. And if it's 95 degrees, humid, I'm by a pool, I'm looking for something that's almost water. And of the four beers we've had tonight, lighthearted is the one that I can open that can and I can drink all 12 ounces without putting it down. And I love that about this beer.
Fantastic. Cool.
In a different situation, the basic framework is we're at a barbecue, but I want you to picture it, Harrison, like it's not you in your backyard barbecuing, but you're at your in-laws and your father-in-law is running the barbecue and he's asking you, how's work going? Or maybe even worse, it's like you're at a work event. You're at Kurt's house and the CEO is hosting a barbecue. What's the beer you drink there that's comfortable but sophisticated?
And keeps me appropriate. I mean, it's definitely Oney, the one I still have in my hand right now. Easy to do. I think that the mouthfeel of it will allow me to not chug this thing down in a second. It kind of, every time I drink it, something in my brain says, pace yourself. This is a beer. It may be more 5 or 6 or 7%. So, take your time with this guy. So that kind of the pumping the brakes that happens when I drink this, I think would be appropriate for any formal barbecue you may find yourself in. I think Oney is a nice thing to dig for in the cooler. And if someone who stocked that cooler grabbed that 15-pack from Oscar Blues, of which this beer is in, don't grab the Goodnight. Don't do that to yourself. Go for the Oney, go for the cool tie-dye can, and you'll make it out of that barbecue alive. You'll be fine. What about you, John?
I could not agree more. I'm going to call it onesie, but that's for very much the same reasons. I'm nervous when I'm at an event like that, especially if it's people I don't know. And onesie, it's comfortable to me. It feels like I'm drinking the beer that I drink most often. But it also it kind of instills that, hey, slow down.
Yep.
Don't just crush a lighthearted and then grab another and shotgun it with your boss. Onesie, kind of the flavor profile that brings seems to enforce some responsibility for me.
Wonderful. Cool. Next up was mowing the lawn, or you're cleaning up the yard, painting the fence, power washing the house, whatever it is. You're outside, it's hot, you're sweating, it's taking longer than you thought. And you go to grab what, John? What's your kind of I'm yard working today beer? What'd you discover today?
For me, I'm going to use Fly Jack in this instance. I think if I remember my tasting notes correctly, Fly Jack, it has a bit of a lingering taste. So it's not something that's going to distract me from the work I have to do, power washing the house, mowing the lawn, whatever, when it's nice enough for me to be doing some outside work, but I still want to accompany it with a beer. Fly Jack, I'm going to choose that one because it's 2, 3, 4 beers. I can drink as much as I have to, but it's not something that I just feel compelled to just crush. That's a tough one, though. What about you, Harrison?
It was tough. I mean, almost, the poolside and the mowing the lawn scenario could almost jump back and forth. But for me, daytime fit in here really well. There was kind of some lemongrass-y, certainly citrusy notes happening there. Very clean, very crisp. I'm out on the lawn. I'm hot. I'm looking for something that's very refreshing and easy to kind of have a couple gulps in the can is gone. So daytime definitely checked that box. And really, I mean, as I said, I think while I was drinking it, that it was a kind of a something that maybe a go-to summer beer overall. And I do spend a lot of the summer doing yard work, so fitting that the daytime is the beer I choose for this.
If you've had a good summer, it should. This is subjective, but it should hearken or bring back memories of at least at one point mowing a lawn, and maybe sweating a little bit and coming inside for what used to be lemonade and now is daytime or flyjack. The last one, I think we changed pretty much last minute based on the whole change in the world since we were planning this podcast, but I think it still applies. Initially, it was going to be kind of what beer is what's your happy hour, just got out of work, going to be a long night, or even still now, like I like the idea of what's your Zoom beer or your office meeting beer, or, what's your I'm working from home and I want to stay responsible beer.
Yeah. I mean, both those scenarios, whether it's, when I'm heading back to the pub and we're all able to do that again and grabbing a beer, or I'm having a Zoom happy hour that I think might be 15 minutes, but turns into an hour and a half. How do I stabilize myself there? And it's lighthearted. Again, I said kind of selfishly earlier that I work 5 days a week. So like to be able to have that beer as much as possible. And this is the category for that. Something that I can end of each day go, you know what? It's lighthearted o'clock. I'm going to go grab one of those at 5 p.m. And then around 5 p.m. And enjoy it, and know that I can have one or two again before the rest of happy hour even starts. What about you, John?
So it's easy to deduce, if you're using deductive logic, that my last one is going to be daytime from Lagunitas. But if I had them all to choose, daytime from Lagunitas is what I'm putting here. That was the beer that it gave me enough flavor. It was if I had to put one of these in like a West Coast calorie conscious IPA, it was daytime. And especially if it's a happy hour, if I've got things to be done, but I still want to kind of enjoy myself and have a good time. That tasted a lot like a beer that I would. It's hard to put that into definitive terms, but daytime, that's the one I'm going to for work from home.
Perfect.
Any of these, I think, would be a good option. And what's most important is that Harrison and I are air quotes beer experts and air quotes not experts at all. So there is no right or wrong, but we definitely encourage you to try these beers. And if you pick one of them up and you don't like it, what's most important is to know that the next one you pick up is going to be pretty different.
That's true.
So try them. And if you want to try them all and you remember to use the coupon code podcast, go to the Untappd store. We finally, or rather just recently, released the tasting flight board. You can buy an Untappd flight board and some tasting glasses, or you can buy them individually. If you're interested in getting one, make sure you use that coupon code podcast so you can save some money on the purchase. But otherwise, thanks so much for listening along with us. Of course, the show notes and any relevant links are going to be available at our website, podcast.untappd.com. If you have any questions or feedback for the show, connect directly with Untappd on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, or connect directly with me and Harrison on our Facebook group, which is Drinking Socially.
Yep. And as always, make sure you have your Untappd app up to date with those new updates out there. You want to make sure you're enjoying all the great stuff you can do. So update if you haven't in a little bit. And check out Greg's List. Remember, we're still, tracking who's doing delivery, curbside, takeout, all that stuff right now. The world's a little bit different. So Greg's List is the spot to look at and find out where you can find, a place to deliver great beer right to you a lot of the times, or close by and go grab yourself and enjoy tonight. And, leave us a review if you like the show on iTunes, YouTube. We're on YouTube. You don't know. It's a lot of fun to check it out over there. Some fantastic comments we've seen in the past. And other than that, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Cheers.